The Russians want to convince you that the structure of power in the West, with all its checks and balances, with all of its balanced way of voting and of electing your leaders, is pointless. They want to make you believe that it's hypophenomenal, that it's pointless and obsolete. The Russians themselves, they have a word for this. They say that democracy, or demokratia in Russian, for them they call it dermokratia, which is a mix between the Russian word dermo, which is poop, and the Russian word demokratia, which is democracy. They put those two words together. They don't respect democracy. They don't like this democracy. They don't understand democracy. The Russian people have been completely separated from politics. And that is the main issue. We see their propaganda machine in action right here, right now. With all of these people who support terrorist organizations and say that actually they're freedom fighters. How can anybody call a rapist a freedom fighter? How can anybody shill for Hamas and say that they are warriors for peace? It's unbelievable. It's so ridiculous. It feels like we're living through a Twilight Zone episode. I'm not sure if you guys have watched Twilight Zone, but for this situation it's a very fitting comparison. Because that is what it looks like. With all these people, all of these apologists, claiming that in reality Russia was provoked. And this is something I would like to cover a little bit more extensively. The big lie, the great lie, of the supposed promises made to Russia that were not kept. And why is this a lie? Because there was no treaty made with Russia which claimed that the West cannot expand to the East, that no more countries can join NATO. This is absolutely idiotic. There was no such treaty. Russia lied about it and they continue to lie about it. And every single person who I personally engaged on this situation, every single person who claimed that supposedly Russia is owed something because the evil NATO expanded into the West, every single time I asked them, what was this treaty called? They have no idea. Because there was no treaty. There was no agreement. It's idiotic. Absolutely idiotic. And it's very sad that nowadays, with all the means of information we have at our disposal, there are still people plagued by ignorance. There are still people plagued by this misinformation. I guess it's only natural. When there is so much information to look at, we become uncertain. Where is the correct information and where is the false misinformation? But my friends, there is something that all of us have to remember every single day of our lives. If you want to believe in something, go for it, believe in it. But if you want to believe in a certain ideology preached to you by others, you need to be able to justify it. When the time comes, you can't answer by saying I was simply following orders. You can't answer with I didn't know better, because the deed has already been done. We have responsibility over who we pledge our allegiance to. Every single person has that responsibility. The Russian people have that responsibility, and they understand this. But a lot of them, unfortunately, don't care. As long as they get the little shot of vodka on the table, and a little bit of food, and a little bit of their precious gas, which they have used and weaponized for so long at this point. I have lost count of the Russian propaganda videos that mentioned that people were freezing in the West. It's laughable, really. It's very funny. Because in reality, people are freezing in Russia. One of the countries who produces the most gas in the world. And its people are freezing to death. Its people live in poverty. One of the countries with the most natural resources, with the most wealthy land, the biggest country in the world, in fact. And their people live in poverty. The biggest country in the world has an economy smaller than Italy. How does that work? Because, my friends, Russia is not a democracy. Russia can't even exactly be called a dictatorship. Russia is a kleptocracy. It's a country-sized criminal syndicate with Putin on top. And anybody who disagrees with him, well, they find themselves in front of an open window with nothing behind, and they're just compelled to keep going forward out of that window. Or of course, they could always commit suicide with 10 bullets in their head. It sometimes happens. You know, 10 bullets suicide. Never heard of it? It's popular in Russia. It's a common condition.